What the bleeding hell are we doing, people? My Patreon family. I love that you are here checking out this bonus MXtra for Season 7, Episode 29, which was on rockism versus poptimism. Neither one is a winner. And as promised, this is titled, What's Wrong with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? And it's going to be all about that hall and, various aspects of it, including a list of artists who have been either snubbed after many nominations or never nominated, but who should be in the hall. And a lot of my opinions on how the hall should change. I'm just going to keep calling it the hall. I've always been somewhat of a skeptic of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's a random group creating a random institution based on one kind of music. It seemed backwards even for its time. And I think it was made at its time in the 80s because people saw that other forms of music were going to take precedence over rock, and somebody said we need to institutionalize rock. And it insulted my wide-ranging sensibilities. Plus, let's be honest, they chose Cleveland over Philly, which I thought was dumb. And even though my son has been going to school in Cleveland for 3 years, I still haven't been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I've been there a dozen times at least. Though, to be honest, I do want to go. I want to see what's going on in there. People who've gone said it's fun. So I've got another year or two to make that happen. Full disclosure, though, I did attend the Rock Hall ceremony in 2016 in Brooklyn when Chicago was inducted. And that was why I went, along with NWA, Steve Miller, somebody who can't stand the hall, Deep Purple, Cheap Trick, and Burt Burns. Of course, now the hall's been around so long that it is an actual institution, and it long ago stopped focusing on just rock. So should it rename itself? Should it be the Music Hall of Fame, the Popular Music Hall of Fame? Does that matter? I'm more interested, rather than the name, in is it doing its job well and what that job is. So from the first induction ceremony in 1986, the powers that be did attempt to induct artists beyond rock, such as Ray Charles, Sam Cooke, Jimmy Rogers, Jimmy Yancey, all considered forerunners or influencers. Organization actually started in 1983 by Ahmet Ertegun, founder of Atlantic Records and what I believe is a generally good and supportive guy, champions music. Cleveland was chosen as the location in 1986 over not just Philly, but Detroit, Memphis, Cincinnati, and NYC, where I'm living now. And IMPay designed the building. It was built and opened finally in 1995. So this is the 30th anniversary of the building, at least. Every year since 1986, there have been inductees. Lots of criticism every year, and rightfully so. Hold the feet to the fire. It's controlled by such a small group of non-musicians, as usually music is, including the asshole Jan Wenner. Jan Wenner, as much as I love Rolling Stone, can go fuck himself. Rockist Dave Marsh, critic and producer John Landau, and Susan Evans, whoever she is. And I'm sorry, I don't know who you are. If you're listening, you're not listening. And their personal tastes and business and financial interests tend to make as much or more of an impact on who gets chosen as voting does. In fact, very often, the top fan vote getter isn't chosen, which to me shouts internal bias. It's not news. People say it all the time. They've been saying it for 40 years. The organization has done its best to correct this over the years, but there are still rightful outcries that people like Sister Rosetta Tharpe took so long to be inducted, or that whole genres and subgenres and countries are ignored in favor of establishment acts and genres, mostly from the US and UK. Some criticize them for inducting too many artists. I'm sorry, but this is fucking stupid. Don't be an elitist. The more artists who are in there, the better, as music is incredibly diverse. There are tons of artists who deserve to be in there who have been overlooked to one degree or another. Not only will I go over some of those artists, I'm going to talk numbers and talk about why they have not inducted nearly enough people. Many artists can't stand the hall, rightfully so, just as some artists don't like, Oscars and all that stuff. It's saying it's all bullshit and that it's in large part because of its biases. That's why they hate it, which include a heavy bias towards men and white people and certain, rockist genres. Like with most institutions, the biggest deciding factors are politics, what looks good or proper, who it pleases, what's the right timing to do something. Like I believe Jan Wenner or somebody was quoted as saying they replaced one artist with a hip-hop artist because they were like, we can't not put a hip-hop artist in. Now, I'm glad it happened, but what a terrible way to do it. Another deciding factor is money. What is going to bring more attention and revenue to the hall? Which artists have the greatest, fan base who are going to love it so much that more money goes to the hall? And, as I said, the personal whims of its controllers. What do they like better? What do they think should be in there more? Until the process is more inclusive and egalitarian, it will continue to be derided as a hollow joke, and it is all kind of silly. Just like with the Oscars and Grammys, etc., I have to say I have a passing interest in who wins and loses. I always check it out every year, mostly to see if one of my favorite bands got in, but also to take the temperature of the world. Are we still ignoring or diminishing the contributions of people because of race or gender or class, meaning that artist didn't, sell as many records or make as much money, whatever? Is the progress we're making organic or performative? And will it stick and become a trend and the new normal, or will it be just a blip? In either case. But a passing interest is still an interest. And that's because, A, I love artists getting their due in any way. We all deserve more of our due. Doobie-doo. And B, I always hold out hope that progress will be made in every field, including this. And past wrongs will be righted in ways that truly move the ball forward, include more people, and aren't just done to appease outcries. Though that's fine, too, because something is better than nothing. It's not the best way to go about it, but something is better than nothing. It is impossible for any one institution to do things in a way that will please everybody. So, slight break there. And most institutions do eventually adapt and grow, however slowly and fitfully. Pressure works. I was at the rally last week, one of the No Kings rally in NYC, and things are starting to change. I don't know. We'll see. The hope is that pressure like that works. Pressure should still be put on the hall to drop its old school rockist mentality, its internal bias especially, and its reliance on favorable press and money concerns over merit, and to hand over the reins to the voters 100%. They shouldn't be deciding it all. This organization is in many ways the perfect example of institutionalized rockism and a great way to continue to show the divide between the common people and the powers that be who make these decisions, which is happening in business and politics and everywhere in the world, including the common rockist infighting between fans of old classic rock, 60s and 70s, and new classic rock of the 80s to 2000s, or however you divide it. Because the hall has also been criticized for ignoring alt-rock of all kinds. But these criticisms and arguments could go on forever, so let's talk, as promised, let's talk numbers. Since 1986, the Hall has inducted around 375 artists into its main category titled performers. The eligibility there must be 25 years since an artist's first recording. Another 45 have been inducted as influencers, which is usually where they sequester non-rock acts or acts they feel should be in there despite votes, so good and bad reasons to sequester them, but they have been elected nonetheless. There are other non-act categories like non-performers, such as producers and business people, etc. Award for musical excellence for performers not associated with an act, like session people, just well-known instrumentalists who have done a lot of work for a lot of people. In 2018, Steven Van Zandt, one of my bands, Joy Buzzer, is on his label, tried to start a category called singles, honoring songs that have had a major influence on rock. As expected, based on his tastes, it's biased towards early rock and garage rock. That's one reason Rec is not on that label. This only lasted until 2020, as far as I can tell. Anyway, back to the performer numbers. If you add the 375 or so performers inducted with the 45 influencers, you get 420. Total coincidence, but that's fun, right, dude? 420 artists inducted. I say that number is way too low. Okay, one rough estimate, and very rough, of course, because you'll never know the answer to this. How many music artists there have been in history is anywhere from hundreds of thousands to millions. Now, sure, that includes genres that wouldn't be considered for this hall, rightly or not. It also includes unrecorded people. So let's knock that down. Let's start with targeting it at the middle number of about 500,000 artists. And let's say those are 500,000 recorded artists in one form or another. Let's say 2/3 of them are either not a fit for the hall or ineligible for the hall because of the 25-year rule. Maybe they don't rise to the level of, fame or notoriety or influence yet, like, Rec and all of that. And let's say that's 2/3. That still leaves, let's just round it down to 150,000 artists. All right. So 420 artists make up 0.3% of 150,000. Now, similar institution, Baseball Hall of Fame. There have been an estimated 20 to 23,000 players in the history of baseball. Let's say 23,000. 278 players are in the hall. That makes up 1.2% of all players. Or more if you take the smaller number of 20,000. 1.2% is 4 times the amount as 0.3 as the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Now, sure, the Baseball Hall of Fame started way earlier, so it's had time to amass that number. But numbers are constantly growing, including people who play baseball and people who make music. And that means by rights, there should be 4 times as many artists in the Rock and Roll Hall. And to me, that's a conservative number. Yes, again, the hall is much younger than the Baseball Hall of Fame, so it'll do some catching up. But I think its pace is way too slow. I think it should be inducting far more people every year, far more artists. Even if you further the parallel and only include, I don't know why I actually didn't continue that note. They should be widening the net and, again, inducting far more people each year. If they're talking strictly politics and press, it would make millions of fans happier. If you're talking who deserves it, it would be fairer and overall give them a much better reputation, among other things, and it would right some wrongs in their bias and just be more inclusive and eclectic and diverse and all of that stuff and show the rich, tapestry of music creation in a way that it is still struggling to do. It's done better, but still struggling to do. Which gets me into another controversy. Every year, all right, that nominees and inductees are announced, the next thing that happens is people start talking about who haven't yet been inducted, who have sorely deserved it, or even nominated. Some of those acts have been nominated often and never broke through, and others have never been nominated. It'd be impossible to list all the artists people have named that they're upset have been overlooked. So I'm going to name the big ones, or some of the big ones. In the interest of time, I'm going to avoid telling stories of specific oversights and controversies like, oh, this year this person wasn't, blah, blah. In many cases, those people were eventually inducted, so that all kind of doesn't matter. I'm just going to name the artists and maybe give an opinion or two. So to research this, I looked at several lists. None are comprehensive, but all have something to contribute to the conversation, and some are pretty, extensive. All of these lists are too long to share here. Most of them are over 100 artists. I did sift through them to find ones I liked that should have been maybe included on the shorter list, and I'll get to those too. But what I'm going with is a list I found on Axios.com of the top 25 all-time snubs because it's more concise, it's very well thought out and researched, and it's diverse. Also, there are quite a few faves of mine on here, but, it keeps me in check because a lot of them are not my faves, so I'm not just saying I think, Matthew Sweet should be inducted because he's a favorite of mine. I'm not going to name my super faves who might not be on anybody's list. And he's not on anybody's list. So let's go to it. Number 25 on the list is Alice in Chains. They have showed Alice in Chains. They've showed up on many lists. And considering Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, and Nirvana are all in, this is an oversight. They should be in too. Number 24 is Jethro Tull. The Hall has been known to have a bias against prog rock. They eventually get there, but it takes them a while. But if Rush and Yes and the Moody Blues and Genesis are in, Jethro Tull should be in too. Alanis Morissette. This goes towards the Hall's bias, two biases, against modern rock, things that smack of pop, and women. So 3. biases. Toots and the Maytals. If Bob Marley's in, they should be in too. They're number 22. 21, Jane's Addiction. Their early influence on alt rock and grunge and Perry Farrell's promotion of alt music through Lollapalooza are major reasons why they should be in the Hall of Fame. I don't know if it's because Perry Farrell has some maybe, interpersonal issues that he's turned people off or whatever, or it's just a bias against alt rock. I don't know. Number 20, Diana Ross. Now, weird thing. So some sources say she's been inducted as a solo artist, but I could not find her name on any official list. The only time her name pops up other than as a presenter is she was inducted as part of the Supremes in 88, but I guess she's not rock enough for the Hall, and that is common. Number 19, Graham Parsons. Pioneer of country rock, was in the Byrds, but not inducted with the Byrds. That's an oversight. Speaking of Prague again, number 18 is King Crimson. Revered by Prague people and other progressive-leaning, like metal and the bands alike. I mean, they're legends. They should be in there. Number 17, a fave of mine, the Smashing Pumpkins, often overlooked when discussing the grunge era because they were grunge adjacent. But their mix of some grunge with shoegaze and goth and pop and emo has been so freaking influential, probably more so than a lot of grunge bands, and their legacy is undeniable. Saw them last year, and they were great. Number 16 is De La Soul. I mean, hip-hop has been a real blind spot for the Hall. Only 15 hip-hop acts have been inducted out of, what I said, 420, or even if you say 375 or whatever. So it's no surprise De La Soul isn't in, also considering they're more alt hip-hop, and alt is a bit of a blind spot. So the acts they've inducted would be like Jay-Z and Eminem and I think, and Run DMC and, Grandmaster Flash and all that. The famous ones. Number 15, Daft Punk. Electronic music is not nearly as well represented as it should be, and this would be an easy pick. I believe there are other older electronic artists who should probably be in before them, but decent pick on this list. Number 14 is Pixies. Easy one. Hugely influential, hugely respected. They have a lasting legacy, but of course, alt is not the Hall's strong suit. Overlooked too often. Number 13 is Thin Lizzy, a favorite of my former bandmate Pete's. Metal is more represented than other genres in the Hall, but still not well enough. And this is an example of that. They were pioneers. Number 12, The Replacements. Not a favorite of mine, but they did help to pioneer alt-rock, and if REM is in, then The Replacements should be in. I guess they didn't make enough money for the Hall to consider them. Number 11 is Brian Eno. He is in as a member of Roxy Music, and they deserve it for their influence on New Romantic, New Wave, etc. But considering Eno basically invented ambient music as we know it, and went on to produce huge albums with huge artists and wonderful albums, he's a real oversight. A no-brainer, really. Number 10, Motorhead, a real kind of metal hardcore crossover band, often hard to classify and good for them. Too confusing for the Hall, I guess, even though they are legendary and very influential. And if Black Sabbath is in and, was it, I forget which, Metallica, then they should be in too. The Smiths, number 9, I mean, another personal fave and another no-brainer. Legends. Everyone checks them as an influence and or just as a unique and incredible band. They started a strain of British music that others would grow and develop for the next 5 to 10 years and certainly the next 40. Number 8, New York Dolls, punk, glam, hard rock pioneers, absolute legend who influenced so many, even across the pond, and especially now that David Johansen is dead. Should be inducted. Also, this past week, I played, my other band I'm in, Joy Buzzer, played on a bill with Steve Conti from the New York Dolls. I got to meet him, shake his hand. Eric B. and Rakim is number 7. Again, the Hall's hip-hop blind spot. They wouldn't know enough to know that this duo was seminal, especially their lyrical flow and prodigiousness, that making lyrics the most important thing. Though they did induct people influenced by them, like Jay-Z, Eminem, and Biggie. You got to go to the pioneers, right? Eric B. and Rakim. Number 6, Mariah Carey, rockism, much. Insane she's not in, and this is simply because the Hall is still struggling with its identity. How far afield from rock can it go and still keep its name? I say, so what? She deserves it. Whether or not you classify what she does as rock, she deserves it for so many reasons. Living legend. Number 5, Iron Maiden. How can Judas Priest be inducted and not them? When I was a kid, I thought of those two bands in tandem, even though their trajectories and styles were very different. But Iron Maiden is a legend. They're a huge oversight. I hope it has nothing to do with the fact that the lead singer is gay. John Coltrane is number 4. This is an interesting choice to put on a list, and I think this might have been the favorite of the person who wrote this, especially as high as number 4. I think he could be considered for influencers, but I don't know if I would put him on a list this high. I mean, Jazz Hall of Fame, top 5. Number 3, Sonic Youth. Again, not a fave, but clearly legendary. Noise rock pioneers who helped shape the 90s and indie rock in general. They are still influencing music. Number 2, Chic. Apparently, the most nominated act in Hall history at 11. The group is probably too disco and funk and black and adjacent to all those things for the Hall. Even though Nile Rodgers himself was inducted in 2017, and they had tons of hits, and their sound and production have been hugely influential. And it's a shame that Bernard Edwards was not inducted before he died or in any capacity. So Chic is a great choice. Number 1 on the list, though, and more or less, I would put many of these at number 1, but this does make sense as a pick, and that is Joy Division / New Order. This is a no-brainer. Post-punk and new wave all in one. Clear legends. Often more revered than Depeche Mode, although I prefer Depeche Mode. I did an episode on both of them. If you look back, they definitely should be in the Hall. Now, I would add to this list some other artists who have been commonly named. Devo, who I guess is too electronic. Garth Brooks, legend, too country. Weird Al, too weird or eclectic. Weezer, probably too alt, despite having hits and remaining in the public consciousness for 30 years. Sting, solo, that's a no-brainer, legend. In Excess, too new, too forgotten. I don't know if U2 is in. They should be in. They were huge, and they did wonderful music. Bjork, too female, too weird, too not American or British. I don't know. Stone Temple Pilots, if Pumpkins are in, then they should be too, but too alt, maybe, and too morphy, maybe. I don't know. Terrible judgments, but they should be in. Tears for Fears. If Duran Duran is in, Tears for Fears should be in. Huge. Go back to my Tears for Fears episode to find out why. And possibly the biggest and also easiest snub to correct is the Monkees. This is so rockist. And considering other pop, rock, and or collaborative acts have made it in, this is just stubborn unwillingness to admit that good music and good rock and pop music can come from many places. This is an old one. Like, hardcore rockists can't stand the Monkees. And middle finger to y'all for that. Because even though I am never going to say the Monkees were better than the Beatles like some contrarian idiots say, sorry if you're one of those, I will say the Monkees were amazing and deserve tremendous respect and induction. But I'd love to hear your take on this, whether you think the acts I named deserved it, who I missed, because I guarantee there's someone you love that I didn't put on there, and your overall thoughts of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and whether it's doing its job well or not. I'd love to hear all of those things. You know why. Patreon people, thank you. If I decide to share this worldwide, you are getting a treat because, again, this is a favorite topic of mine, and I hope one of yours too. At any rate, I will talk to you next week. Bye.